Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. They broke down this action. You can check out a full Inside the Birds reaction. We got them right now here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Moshe. Well, we knew this day was bound to happen, and here we are. The postmortem has gotten here. Shouldn't be much of a surprise. I think maybe the lack of competitiveness was maybe more of the surprise. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I thought this time around it would be a more competitive game. We've seen the Eagles be able to run against some pretty good run-stopping teams, whether that was New Orleans weeks ago. Washington at times has been decent against the run. So, when healthy. So I thought that they would be able to control the line of scrimmage a little bit more. I didn't think that they were going to overwhelm the Bucs, and I thought that there would be bouts of adversity. But one thing that we said on the pregame show, Adam and I really agreed that what the Eagles could not do was fall behind like 10-0 like they had done early in the games against I think it was the Giants in Washington, and then just figure they can come right back. We knew if they fell behind early against the Bucs, it's probably because they weren't running the ball well and then would have to pass the ball a lot, and that's obviously not their strong point right now.
Yeah, let's go through some of the things. Let me ask you this. Was there a moment in the game that you felt they're not getting back in this game or this game's over? Where was that for you where you felt the disparity is obvious?
Yeah, I think 14-0 again because it was so early, and the way Tom Brady marched the offense down the field the first time to get 7 was not great. They converted a couple of third downs there. It really wasn't difficult for him. And then, to me, 17-0 was going to be impossible to come back from. And then, of course, the Gronkowski wide open touchdown seals the deal there. But I thought pretty early on when they get the Bernard 2-yard touchdown on the first drive, and then I think that the Kevon then they punted and they came back with the 10-play 70-yard drive with the Kevon, I always forget his name. Kevon Vaughn. Is that what his name?
Yeah.
That's the name, right? Keyshawn Vaughn, whatever. I'm sorry. I'm butchering names. But when he scored and they go up 14-0 after 3 possessions, and the Eagles had not really done much on their first 2 or 3 possessions, that did not bode well for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I wrote down 5 observations for me. I thought the Bucs set the tone right from the game. Now, I know we talked about it Friday. If you win the toss, do you take the ball? I don't think that changes the game, but you give them the ball, and they did what they did. They went right down the field and scored on you, and I thought that set the tone of the whole game. Then it's 17-0. The interception, is a killer because you're going to get points and the ball back. Forget all that. It's 17-0. You still got the ball back. You go 3 and out. You get the stop. They punt, and then the muff punt. Just absolutely, I thought, was the no doubt about it because they go right down and score after that, and now it's 24-0. So even though it was 17-0, they still had a couple chances to at least try to get points on the board. They get that muff punt, though, I thought was really and he says yesterday, well, Ward had back spasms. That's not – for me, Rager's getting a lot of heat, and he deserves it. He stinks. But that's on the coaching staff for continuing to put him out there.
Yeah, it was a windy day. He looked a little bit distracted, Jalen Rager did, so I don't know. But I agree with you. I would have tried to find a different alternative at that point. But I think that also illustrates the big picture that the Buccaneers – was the tone of the column I wrote. The Bucs are just better, a lot better than the Eagles, and you hope that going 7-3 down the stretch doesn't make the front office or anyone think that there were not major holes. Muff punts and shanked punts. You did not see that from the Buccaneers. Bad turnovers you did not see from the Buccaneers. Just being fast, being physical, being aggressive, especially on defense. You didn't see that from the Eagles the way you see it in the Buccaneers. Crisp passing, timing, rhythm. You did not see that from the Eagles the way you saw from the Buccaneers. So these teams this is not a game where I hope people are like, man, the Eagles really, they blew it by mistakes. If they did this differently, if they did that differently, they could have won the game. No, this team has now done it twice in a row against the Bucs. If they played them 10 times, they're going to lose that time, 8 out of 10. You just wish that you're losing like 26-24 or showing that you're a growing team, you're a competitive team, and you're not the team from the first 7 weeks. And unfortunately, they did look like the team from the first 7 weeks.
What'd you think? Look, Sirianni, I thought had a pretty solid season. I thought he made some good adjustments from early in the year. They turned into a run team. I thought for the most part the team seemed prepared. I thought he got waxed yesterday.
Well, it's hard, I think, for him when your bread and butter is taken away from you right from the start. Can you run back into a game when you're down, 14-0, 17-0? Yes, but again, this team, it's not just their offense and Brady. They're very difficult to run against. There are some teams that have figured it out, but when you're already down, they can get more aggressive. They can take more shots. And then clearly they have Todd Bowles is a great defensive coordinator, and they had a really good game plan for what they wanted to do with Jalen Hurts, and that's kind of force him to go to his left where he doesn't throw the ball as well. And they were able to bring guys up on the line of scrimmage to stop the zone read. You saw that frustrated them. So, yeah, could Nick Sirianni done things differently? Sure. But I do hear a lot of, how do you not get the ball to Devontae Smith until the third quarter? And I say, well, Nick Sirianni doesn't draw up a play called the Devontae Smith play. Like in the first 15, you may have a few plays where you're throwing screens or this or that to get the ball. But you draw up plays that are designed to beat the defenses that you're seeing. And if Devontae Smith's running wide open across the middle of the field and the quarterback's throwing it to somebody else because he predetermined that throw, that's on the quarterback too. It's not just on Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Smith and his role in the offense. I mean, is he to you a legit number one guy? I mean, is he the guy that can build an offense around? Is he your Devontae Adams? Is he your, one of those guys? Or do they have to find a better guy or at least a complement guy to him?
Well, it's a twofold question because if I do think that because he's the way he's like kind of a long strider for a little guy, he's not explosive. He's not Jamar Chase, for example, who can go out there and just completely bury you and make a contested catch and do 1,000 things. I mean, he's not bad. I'm not trying to say Devontae Smith's not in the same echelon, but he's a different kind of wide receiver. And the biggest comparison that you would get from people from him coming out of college was Marvin Harrison, who was a great wide receiver. But the Colts also had Reggie Wayne opposite Marvin Harrison, if I'm not mistaken. So I do feel like this team needs another wide receiver. But the problem is you can go out and get Allen Robinson. You can go out and trade for Calvin Ridley. But does that guy get the targets worth either the draft pick or the trade compensation or the money you're paying in free agency? Does the quarterback see that half of the field to get that guy the football?
Yeah, you're trying to figure out, okay, what this offense is moving forward, and you're just trying to envision with him, what he is. You have him and Goddard you feel pretty good about, and obviously you need to find another guy. Do you find that level of guy, Calvin Ridley, Allen Robinson, or do you just need to get a more veteran player like a Torrey Smith like they got a couple of years ago? So I feel like that's a big question mark for them moving forward if Hurts is going to be your quarterback, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you get a guy who does see the field better or just is a little bit more of a distributor all around, you're still going to – it does feel like the Eagles have a number one wide receiver, a number one tight end, but then like almost a number 4 wide receiver after that. They do need another really good receiving option, I think, to be an explosive offense that can handle itself against really good playoff caliber teams. And maybe even if you're down 14-0 and you have to throw the ball, you don't feel so bad. Like if the Chiefs are down 14-0, right, you're not counting them out of a game because they have so many weapons. So I think the Eagles do need an upgrade in that regardless.
Right, because it's hard for that. I find it's just hard to kind of evaluate Hurts when I think the pass game is so it's very one-dimensional.
The pass game is, one-dimensional, two-dimensional, however you want to call it. It's pretty. I mean, the Bucs pretty much knew what the Eagles were going to do when they wanted to throw the ball, and they were able to scheme as they wanted. Some of those other teams that the Eagles played down the stretch, I'm sure they would have loved to have had either the athletes, the acumen, or the health to be able to throw some of their best players on the field and do that. But the Eagles did catch some teams at a time where they didn't have full strength. So, but that's even the Bucs were in full strength.
Yeah,
they were missing some guys. They're just better.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me ask you about what you saw from Hurts yesterday. Did he struggle? Was there just not plays to be made? How do you kind of look at his performance? And, they had 17 yards of offense in the first quarter. They didn't score in the first half. The quarterback has to have some role in that.
Yeah, he certainly does. I think it illustrated the fact that although he has grown throughout the year, he is still a quarterback that needs the running game to be functional and probably overwhelming to be able to work off of that. When he has to throw the ball a lot, I still think so one thing I've been told by people who have seen Eagles tape who work in the league is that when they watch him play, he tends to go from a low to high progression instead of a high to low. So sometimes he misses those guys who are wide open downfield because he's already seen the defense surveyed and decided that the shorter route is going to be the safer route and the better route. And so he completes those passes at times and it looks good, but you leave the plays on the field or you become predictable after that, where the scheme or that you're going against, the defensive coordinator, they kind of pick on to that and they'll let you just, dink and dunk like that and try to take away everything else. So that was kind of manifested in the game. And also, the arm strength for the type of throw he's trying to make. I've said it many times with you, right? Russell Wilson doesn't have a very strong arm, but he throws with great timing, great anticipation, especially on the deep ball. He's one of the best deep ball throwers without having a rocket arm. But when you watch Jalen Hurts play, the first interception right before halftime, the cornerback falls. Smith is wide open. He's late to see that. And then when he does see that, he's throwing on the run. He's not square. So when he throws, he doesn't have that Herbert-like zip to just get the ball to Smith. And the safety recovered and made an interception. And then the second throw, Mike, was kind of the bad decision-making off the back foot, looping it in the air.
Yeah.
And we've seen that at times too. And that's almost more of a disappointing because that's just a bad decision from the start. On that play, if you watch it in slow motion, you'll see that he actually he left the pocket a little bit into pressure. If he had climbed it, he had got really good protection on that play. If he climbed the pocket just a little bit because he bought himself extra time, Jordan Howard had leaked out and was wide open across the middle. I mean, that's a pitch and catch to Jordan Howard instead of an interception.
That's on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I they give up 31. Gannon, obviously, people have their problems, but he forced 7 punts. They got 4 sacks. I felt like the defense kept them around. Like we said, like it's only 17-0. Like if the offense had a pulse, the defense, I thought, did, which isn't indicative of what they were all season against the better teams. But in this game, you give up 31. You're like, his defense got blitzed again. But 4 sacks and 7 punts, I feel like they had a shot with the way their defense played.
It's tough. I don't know how to reconcile it because I agree with you. They go through a stretch there where you mentioned, I think they had sacks on third downs on 3 consecutive drives that forced those 3 punts you were talking about. But how do you balance that against the first 4 possessions? 3 of them were of 10 or more plays and of 50 or more yards. So it's almost like they were Jekyll and Hyde. And then after they had that nice stretch of three consecutive possessions where the Bucs had to punt, then they had the turnover issues, and you saw that the defense gave up touchdowns immediately, right? A 5-play, 48-yard drive after the muff punt, and then an immediate 36-yard touchdown after the interception, the one to Mike Evans. They didn't produce a whole lot of turnovers. So, again, you want to play defense, you want to be stout, but in playoff games, takeaway ratio, turnover ratio is really important. It's been a thing for them all year where you've seen them play pockets of good defense, but still not be able to produce game-changing type of plays.
Yeah.
So and look, part of the 2 touchdowns they allowed in the second half might have been on the field a whole lot because of the muff punt and the interception. So I do agree with you in some sense that the defense sort of straightened themselves out. But again, you can't allow, if you want to win a game, you can't allow touchdown drives of 10, 11, 12 plays 3 times in your first 4 times out on the field there.
You're right. Well, I mean, the whole predication of this defense is you're going to have to do 12, 15 plays multiple times in the game, and you're going to make mistakes in those drives. That's where they don't get the turnover and they constantly give up points. You
got to be really solid in the red zone, right? If you're going to have that philosophy, you got to make sure you're giving up field goals and not touchdowns.
Correct. Like Washington, they gave up the 3 field goals or 2 field goals instead, and Washington gets shut out in the second half. You think John Gannon, he's going to get a couple head coaching interviews. Is he a legit candidate for these jobs?
Well, it's hard to say because obviously if we graded on performance, probably not. He didn't have a terrible year, but he didn't have a great year. But it's not always about performance, right? I mean, like Joe Judge sat in a chair with Mara and Tish, the owners of the Giants, and he blew him away with his I don't want to say spiel, but with whatever he said. And they fell in love with him. And so John Gannon's really smart and he's engaging and all of that stuff comes out when you sit down and talk to him. He's a bright guy. I know a lot of people are down on him right now, but again, he was seen as a head coaching candidate even before he took this job as the next future head coach. And his players really do like him and respect him and then believe what he preaches. So I can see Jonathan Gannon sitting in a chair going through his, like Andy Reid with the thick binder with Jeffrey Lurie and Joe Banner in 98, kind of wowing them with his philosophies and with his, thoughts on where the game is headed and where they have to be and getting a job. I wouldn't say it's likely, but I'm just saying you can't dismiss it just because people are mad about what they've seen yesterday and throughout the year.
Right.
It's not always about what you did that year as a coach.
Absolutely. Because I think if you ask John Gannon or people in that front office, hey, does John Gannon have the pieces on defense to have an outstanding defense? And you would say, not really. I mean, the problem is around this team, you don't have that guy that you can say on any given week, I'm going to do this with you and we're going to game plan you for that. They just don't have that guy.
Right.
I mean, if Darius Slay, no knock on Slay, had a great year, but if he's the best guy you got, you're Detroit.
You're right. I mean, clearly the Eagles have a better D line, but they are very deficient on the back end in what I call like progressive, interchangeable, movable pieces and playmakers. You look at the Bucs; they've got the Bucs at one point, right? They drop Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh into coverage and blitz the safeties. I mean, if that's not the craziest thing you'll ever see,
yeah,
I don't know what is. And I'm not saying like you need to be that radical with your defensive linemen, but their linebackers are steady. Their safeties are steady. Their corner opposite Darius Slay are steady. But these guys are not the type of guys that are going to make you these game-breaking type of play. They're not the Darius Leonards of the world. They're not the Tyrann Matthews. Even Avonte Maddox is a good player, but you saw what happened. And tip of the cap to Bruce Arians, he said, I'm going to make this guy play man coverage on my best wide receiver. So he puts Evans in the slot, and that's a mismatch for Evans. So they've got to get better and more, not just better in talent, but also in acquiring the type of talent that can play in a defense that's predicated on disguise and deception and movable parts and pieces.
Geoff Mosher, okay, now the offseason's here. The first thing that needs to be addressed is what?
I mean, they obviously have to decide what they want to be going forward offensively, and that's going to be a conversation in which the quarterback is involved. So that's the first thing that they have to decide, right? The offensive makeup and how the quarterback fits or does not fit. And then the second thing is what I talked about. On defense, they have to figure out a way to become more athletic, more diversified, and fit what Jonathan Gannon wants to do on the back end.
They got 3 draft picks, so I'm sure we'll talk more about this on Friday as we start to look ahead to the offseason. If Geoff Mosher was making the first selection at number 15, what is the number one area that they have to target?
Well, I'm BPA on this. So, I mean, look, defense is very important. I think around 15, you'll probably see a pass rusher. So I think that, a guy, if a George Karlaftis or David Ojabo from Michigan is there, that's good. If Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati is there, I'd take a long, hard look, although corners tend to go early, so I don't know that he'll be there. And, man, I'm just trying to get an idea of who I think is going to be around 15. Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle from Georgia, should be considered. I would personally consider one of those linebackers, either Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd, but I think you and I know that that's probably unlikely. Same thing with the safety from Notre Dame. If I could get the safety from Notre Dame, I would probably be, I'd be happier
Kyle
than a you know what
Hamilton.
and you know what. But yeah, Kyle Hamilton. But I also don't think that's. I think you're looking more about that corner defensive end area there with Sauce. There's another cornerback, and Singleton will be gone by then. But there's a kid from Auburn who's pretty good, McCrary.
Yep.
The pass rushers I just mentioned. That's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah, Josh Sweat not playing yesterday. I mean, it didn't kill him. Kerrigan actually played a half-decent game yesterday, so but you need a defensive end, too.
Yeah.
Barnett's going to be gone, right?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned Ojabo or
that
George
Barnett
Karlaftis.
penalty was a big moment in the game, too.
Yeah, it was a big moment, and it's easy to say that's what you get with Derek Barnett, and you do. Although in that one, it's probably been a little bit more reputation. It looked like he was kind of blocked in there and then tried to hold up and didn't. The funny thing is, it feels like in the fourth quarter when they were clearly losing the game, he's like, you know what, I'm going to go pick a fight with Tom Brady now.
Yeah, right.
Now that a penalty won't hurt me, why don't I go put my hands on Tom Brady?
Yeah, he gives him a little two-hand shove, and then he's like,
Yeah.
All right, football at 4. It's Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. You guys can check out more from the recap on the newest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast. It's out now wherever you listen to your podcast. Geoff will be back on Friday as we start to look ahead. They got some cap space. They got some draft choices. They got to figure out the quarterback situation. They got a couple of free agents they're going to have to decide on, and we'll start.
Can I add one thing real quick,
Sure.
Mike, before you get – because back to your question, I mean, they'd certainly have to figure out the Jason Kelce situation and whether or not Jason Kelce is going to come back.
Do they figure that out, or does he figure that out for them?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he wants to come back, you're like, okay. But he has a poison pill in his contract, so it would have to be reworked, or else they owe him like $25 million or something crazy like that. So they've got to figure that out, because if he doesn't come back, then you kind of have to figure out, well, where's Dickerson going to go? Where's Sayamalo going to go? What am I doing with Brandon Brooks? What am I doing with Jack Driscoll?
Yeah.
Do I draft Tyler Lindenbaum if he's available at 15
that whole
or 16?
situation? Even if Kelce comes back, that answer is looming of who's your next center. Is it Dickerson? Is it Sayamalo?
Yep.
Is it somebody else? Like, no matter what, whether he's back or not, they have to figure out what Dickerson's next step is. Are they just going to make him the left guard? Do they look at him as the center long term? I think that looms.
Right.
I noticed that Lane Johnson was out of the game yesterday. Later on.
They said the knee,
Okay.
which he's been dealing with for a while.
Now,
Yeah.
that being said, he's starting to get up there. You're going to have to start deciding what to do at right tackle. Brandon Brooks, what's his deal? I mean, he did not get put on the injured list, but was unable to play. So the offensive line, while it seems it was very strong, they do have some questions there.
Very much so. I agree.
All right, Geoff Mosher's back Friday, and we will start to look at some of those questions because the offseason's here. Football at 4 rolls on all offseason long. The playoffs. We'll talk NFL playoffs. We'll also get into free agency and the draft and all that stuff here on Football at 4. All right, Geoff, take care, man.
All right, Mike, thanks.
Another good edition of Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher here from the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, you can hear Geoff on the Inside the Birds podcast, which is out right now over on Apple, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast.